Welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast, where it's all about a transformational growth and having a resilient mindset. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Today, we have on the show, he's a retired contractor, an author, and a world traveler. I'm really looking forward to this because I love to travel as well. He's had some adversities in his life with his family, where there was some high expectations, and he had to learn how to overcome some of these adversities with his family. Let's welcome to the show my really good friend, Mr. RC. How you doing, sir?
Great, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me, man. Where you coming from? Where you join us from?
I'm in Southern California, in Huntington Beach, California, and I live right on the ocean in a small craft harbor.
How is it out there? How's the weather out there right now?
It's about 72 and clear. It's going to be a beautiful day.
Absolutely, man. I love it. We're out here in Florida. It's about 89 degrees and it's around hurricane season. So, every single day here is just lightning and thunder and towards the end of the day. So we got to get our like walks and exercise in like early in the morning. So RC, if you can, man, let's hop into it. We learned that you had a rough childhood growing up, man, and that led to some adversities in your life. If you can, tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up for your childhood and just growing up with a poor family, and what was that high level of expectation that you shared?
Well, my father was a plasterer. He worked on Disneyland in Anaheim. That was his last union job. And we lived in a mobile home and traveled through California to different housing developments as they were being built. I was
Hmm.
quite young and don't have any recollection of that, but I've seen the videos. And we lived in a 35-foot trailer. My mother, my father, myself, my brother. And my father was an alcoholic, and he went to bid a job on a bar and restaurant that was vacant, and he ended up taking up the lease, and we had a restaurant bar for 10 years, and that led to a lot of interesting adventures with my father's drinking habits and all the folks that would come through there. It was a very We were on the edge of civilization, farms all around to the west of us and the ocean,
Hmm.
and all the people that came into our establishment were alcoholics and drug dealers and druggies of different ethnic backgrounds. It was a free education on how not to behave.
All right, let's start a little bit at a young age, growing up. What was your childhood like then? So if you're growing up in this environment where you're seeing all of this, what was it like with your friends? What was it like going to like elementary school, middle school, or high school? What was that like for you?
School was an escape for me. School, I had to go to, so my life cutting meat in the kitchen. And, so I didn't have a lot of interaction with children after I left school. I would go home at night at 10 o'clock at night in a taxi with my older brother. So my whole daytime was spent with adults.
Wow. Did that make you have to grow up really fast?
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I was asking you, did that make you have to grow up really fast?
Absolutely. I didn't have much of a real childhood. I had to become adult very quickly because of my father's behavior, the interactions between my parents and the people around me. I saw everything one can see by the time I was 10 or 12 years old. So I probably have a little bit of PTSD, not like you might have, but of course I don't have anything else to measure it against at that time. So I thought that was a normal childhood. It was that was my life.
So, if you could share, what were some of the things that you were experiencing and dealing with growing up at a young age with that you're seeing? I guess, you say you can't compare it, but it may probably seem like normal behavior, sort of, kind of. What were some things that you
Oh,
were seeing?
absolutely. Yes, I saw people shooting heroin, stabbing each other, shooting each other, and playing pool, and I played pool at was already shooting pool on a regular basis, and out there in the middle of that bar dealing with the drinking people who were some sober and some not. And like I say, we saw everything. We had biker gangs come through. We had a large room in the back. We had Ike and Tina Turner come in when they were starting their career. We had a large venue for live entertainment. We had Mickey Reed. We had Mexican large mariachi bands and Cantin Flas, who the Latin community will know who that was. He made 70 or 80 movies in Mexico. Very popular fellow. So I grew up around these performers and also around these other people who were very interesting.
So, being that you grew up in that environment, how did that shape your adult life?
I think I'm more open to people of different backgrounds. I understand that we all struggle with different issues. None of us are perfect, and we do the best we can. I try to go out into the world and make it a better place. It's already bad enough. I think if we all kind of put our best foot forward and help each other, I think that's a better way to go than going out looking for trouble.
Right, right, absolutely. So, when did you decide to leave where you were growing up at around your parents, around the bar, and step out into your own?
Well, my parents always had me working, and my brother also. My father had a plastering business at the same time because the restaurant business is not very dependable.
Right.
When the economy goes down, it's one of the first businesses to go down, also. So my father opened a small plastering business, a one-man operation, and I went to work with him as a young child. And over the years, I learned the skills. And when I graduated from high school, I went to work for him full time while going to college at night. And my mother and father said I could live at home for free if I went to college. So I continued to go to night school so I wouldn't have to pay rent and work with my dad every day. So I had a very close relationship with my father, to see him and sit with him in the truck every day and listen to his stories and inhale
Mhm.
his smoke while he smoked. Um, he was a wonderful person when he was sober, and he was a different person when he wasn't.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What was it like growing up with mom and dad, but it didn't seem like you were being treated as the average kid with a mom and dad, so to speak?
I think it is a tremendous advantage. I miss some things, of course. I had, camaraderie with kids at school during the day and sometimes afterwards, but I was placed in that adult environment very early, and I think it gives you a sense of well, it certainly was an adventure. It gives you the ability to converse with adults and people that are older than you. It gave me an opportunity to hear a lot of interesting stories. My brother bought me a shoe shine box, and I shine shoes, so I'd be down there shining shoes and listen to these people talk. And I learned a lot and saw a lot of things not to emulate. And I think that was a valuable way. My brother and I joke about it. We both should be dead or in prison somewhere. But for some reason, we took a different path and have become very successful in our old age.
That's what I was going to touch on next. So, what are some valuable lessons that you learned as a kid that formed and shaped you to where you're at now today?
Well, you have to be responsible. Show up when you tell someone you're going to be there. Keep your promise and be there. I uh, I had many phone calls in my office in my home. I had a home office, and people would call me and say, Ray, you're the only person that called me back. And I had a pager and an answering machine and an answering service. And when people called me, I knew it was $150 every time that phone rang. So you bet I called them back. And I ran my business in a professional manner. And if you do that, if you treat people fairly, if you keep your promises, and if you charge a fair price, you can't help but be successful. I can't imagine how people go out into the world and do this and not be successful. Obviously, some aren't equipped with the tools necessary, but if you really worked at it, you could develop those tools and become a success. And anyone who tells you you can't is lying to you and giving you bad advice. Anyone out there can do this if you're willing to do the work.
Absolutely. So when she started working with your dad and then you started getting into business on your own, what kind of business did you establish and what are some of the works that you were doing?
Well, we did room additions. We would lath and plaster outside walls of room additions with stucco,
Hmm.
paper and wire and stucco, and that involved getting inspections by different cities and municipalities. So we had to do it properly. There are codes for all these type of activities. We had to be willing to do the work without getting paid. On a room addition, you get paid in stages, so you have to finish the job, and generally they hold back 10% if they're not happy, and they use that 10% to get you to come back and make things good. Later on, we moved to a real niche operation where we did small repairs on apartment buildings that have been damaged by automobiles or leaks in the plumbing. And at first glance, these jobs don't look very lucrative, and so many people weren't interested in it. But we developed a system where we could do a complete job in an inside ceiling in a bathroom, let's say. It would take us 55 minutes, and we'd have it completely finished and ready to paint. And when you're turning over an apartment, that apartment owner wants that apartment finished quickly and ready to rent. So we could do 6 of those jobs a day for a buck and a half each job. So we're knocking down $700 or $800 a day with which isn't terrible.
Oh, that's pretty slick, man. I like that. I wanted to ask you, as you were getting into business, in addition to what you were seeing side by side with your dad, was there any other mentors or anyone that was giving you any type of guidance in the business space?
Well, yes, because I would work for people who owned apartment buildings,
Hmm.
and I always asked them what they did for a living. And I recall one tombstone, and they lived in a very, very nice neighborhood. And so you can make a very good business making tombstones. So there's nothing that will stop you if you want to be successful. I use that environment to learn different avenues of work, learn how people became successful. And I worked for people who were very wealthy. My number one client was the 10th richest man in the world. I never met him, by the way. He had a large corporation underneath him, and I worked through those channels. But
Hmm.
you don't become the 10th richest man in the world by being lazy or a criminal.
Absolutely not. So, being a businessman, I know that sometimes in business, you do have some setbacks. Did you ever experience any setbacks in your business, and what did you do to overcome that?
Absolutely. My work shows, it's visible, it's aesthetic, it's
Hmm.
an art form. So when I did my work, I looked at it in that way, and I got instant gratification. And sometimes in the evening, my phone would ring, and my customer wasn't happy, and he'd seen something that wasn't to his liking, and I took that very personal. I would get a stomach ache and not sleep that night, and I would go back out the next day and rectify that before anything else went forward for the day. That's how I ran my business. I uh, I still have people call me. I've been retired 10 years. I still have people calling me to do jobs for them, and I was very fortunate. I enjoyed my work, but I used to tell people this work is only an excuse to get into your house so I can talk to you and learn something. Everybody has something important to tell and to share with other people.
Definitely. After listening to your story and hearing about your upbringing, I could tell that work ethic was extremely important for you. Can you tell our listeners that's listening to your story how important was work ethic for you? Where did you get it from, and how do you maintain that and sustain that?
Well, it's you being in the military, understand completely. You're
Yeah.
trained, and if you don't produce, you're punished. Be meted out in different ways through lack of approval or physical punishment or any of those in between. And I wanted approval from people, and I didn't want to get the strap, let's say. So you do what's required of you, and then it becomes a habit. I've been retired 10 years. I don't have to work. I'm very comfortable, and I play tennis every day until 11:30. I take a nap, and then I come into my office, I read for an hour or 2 every day, and then I write for 4 or 5 hours, and I do a little bit of promotional work also. So, I'm a working guy, I'm 71, I'm still fit, I don't wanna just melt away and get fat and die. So, I need something to keep my brain active, and I've chosen to write novels, instead, but it's the same process, it's a matter of getting up and getting in the room and doing it, whether it's, flipping burgers or running a car wash or, painting a house, it's all the same. You offer a product at a fair price and do it well. You can't help but become successful.
Man, I love that, man. I love that. I wanted to jump into this because you just mentioned you're an author and you're a writer. How many books have you written? And can you tell us a little bit about some of your books?
I think I have 7 or 8 on Amazon. I have, one that's in editing now, I think it's my best story, it's a California historical fiction novel with real characters mixed in it,
Hmm.
and, I have 12 chapters of a book on World War. It's, like Robin Hood. It's, like a Robin Hood story, and I think really it's the story of my life and the life of everyone else. Most of us start with nothing. Very few people are born wealthy. I started with nothing, less than nothing perhaps, and, worked really hard, and this story is a translation of that into a fictional 18th century English novel where a person has a determination to become successful and has a bit of luck here and there to help him. All of our lives are helped along by good luck and slowed down by bad luck. And we have to understand that we can't control everything that happens around us, but we can sure prepare for bad luck. And if good luck comes, usually that's because we prepared ahead of time.
And I love it. So, saying what you just said, how did you maintain just that financial stability in regards to just starting a business from nothing, building it ground up, and just sustain that over these years to the point of you made it to retirement?
Well, you have to get up and go to work every day. I work 6 days a week for 38 years. My wife, who is a veteran also, she's a Navy veteran. She's one of the first 5 women female navigators in the US Navy.
Wow.
Sadly, she was in before they let women on board ship. But,
Mm,
she was my life partner, and we've been married for 40 years now, and she's very good with money, and she motivates, one to get out of the house and go to work every day. It's, go to work or else, and she was raised the same way. She worked in a supermarket. We're just blue collar people that went to work every day, and we had a long discussion before we were married as to how we wanted to live in our retirement years.
mhm.
We wanted to eat the good dog food, so we made a point of saving our money and investing wisely and doing things that weren't easy. They were difficult. Uh, as you well know, you don't know from one month to the next how much income you're going to have if you're self-employed. So you
Right.
have to kind of watch your budget. I've owned I most of my cars I keep for 18 or 17 or 18 years. I buy nice cars, but I don't buy a new car every year. That's ridiculous. I had 2 trucks in 38 years of working, so you can imagine what my trucks looked like. Um, you know, some guys that have a business or a trade like a carpenter, their trucks look brand new forever. My truck looked beat up after I've had it for a week. So, I've gotten jobs because my truck was so dirty and beat up. They say, "You must be pretty busy, you don't have time to clean your truck." That's right, I was too busy working to clean my truck.
That's what's up, man. So, RC, I know that when it comes to business, man, sometimes some personal things could creep into business. At any point, did any of your childhood upbringing or any like the struggles from growing up or some PTSD or some of those things affected you as a business owner with your decision making or people that you interacted with or anything like that?
Absolutely. I went through a divorce early in my life. I was married for 7 years, and that marriage, failed. I had a, son from that marriage,
Hmm.
and I've been married 40 years this time. I see that because I came from a chaotic background, I sometimes feel comfortable with chaos, and at times I would do things in a way. If I didn't have my partner, my wife, I would have not been as successful because sometimes I wanted to put off making those phone calls. I was under stress, and she made me push through and do those things. I did tell her that she was very good at worrying, and I wasn't going to worry while I was working. I could make more money being happy than I could worrying. So I
Mhm.
gave her the job of worrying about everything, and I went on forward to work every day. I'm not money oriented. I made a lot of money, but I didn't see any of it. It went into our family accounts and paid for our lifestyle. And I wore a pair of white Levi's and a gray T-shirt to work every day and drove a beat up old truck. Uh, but my job was to take care of my family and make all those things that my family needed happen. My son was able to go to camp, Michael Jordan basketball camp, and traveled with his mother to different places. My wife and I have traveled extensively based on the fact that we both went to work every day. My wife had great insurance coverage through her union job as a retail clerk. So we had health care because I didn't. I didn't have a pension. So we created my own pension by buying real estate. And real estate in California is not cheap, and so that made for the into buying properties. So there wasn't always a lot of cash on hand, but my wife was very good at juggling our finances, and she made that happen. If anybody thinks that this journey through life is going to be easy and straightforward, they're in for a rude awakening. I just lost my son at 43. He died, my only child. We have to deal with that.
Wow, man, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I'm 42 years old, so you telling me that like really hit home.
Yep,
Wow. Is that something you're okay with talking about?
it's very difficult. It happened on April Fool's Day, April 1st,
Uh-huh.
just this year. We're still waiting for the toxicology reports. He might have done something foolish, or he might have had his autopsy showed no damage or problems. However, he was born with some minor birth defects, and I have epilepsy and take medication. He had had some issues in the last few months, so he might have had an epileptic seizure, which may not show up in a autopsy. In an autopsy, my father had epilepsy also. So, people out there, if you come from a family with epilepsy, you might want to be a little careful about checking into that, seeing if you're going to have a propensity to have that in your life. I take medication every day. I lost my driver's license for 90 days and had to have my helpers drive me back and forth to work. I could still work, but I retired a year early because of that. I can't work on scaffolding, for fear of having a seizure and falling down and going boo boo, having a big boo boo on my head or worse. So, yeah, life is, look, people who you think their life is perfect. We see them on television. We know they have lots of money. Do deep dives on these people. They all suffer like we do. They lose their children. They lose their riches. They get cheated. They cheat on people. Their marriages fail. We all deal with the same things. Doesn't matter what economic strata you're in. Failure is failure. It's just part of life. I lost my son. I have to deal with that.
Wow. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, man. I know that was hard. I can't imagine. And knowing that epilepsy is something that runs in your family, it's much more harder just to know that there's a deeper bond or deeper connection for you guys there too as well.
Well, and he worked for me like I worked for my father. So I
Oh
feel
wow.
sorry for people whose fathers go to the office every day and they don't have that relationship with their father or their mother that they would have in a family business. I was very close to my mother also because I worked with her in the kitchen of our restaurant every day after school for 10, 12 years. I cut meat, I washed dishes. I still can't wash dishes today. It makes me want to, I just can't do it. I wash more dishes than you can imagine. Go to any store, you see all those dishes. I washed all those dishes over and over again for years. It's I have nightmares about dancing dishes wanting to be washed. Uh, so I started from the very bottom, from shining shoes, washing dishes, sweeping a parking lot with a push broom. And by the way, I was a hyperactive child, so my parents did a lot of this probably to keep me out of their hair. As I look back, that's a big part of their program was to keep me occupied because I was a handful.
So you mentioned that your wife was the one that was managing things for you when it came to like the finances and some of the structural things within your household. I want to talk about like how important was developing a regiment or a routine in regards to how you approach business and how you guys approach life when you guys sat down and says these are our short-term goals and these are our long-term goals and this is what we're going to do to get to this particular point. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Most people go through life without any plan, short term or long term. They get
Hmm.
up, they go to work, they get paid on Friday, buy a six pack, go home, watch the baseball game. That's their plan. That's not a great plan. You need to save some money for the rainy days and for the future when you're not working. My wife and I sat down before we were married. We discussed how we were going to relate to my first wife, what kind of life we were going to live so that my son would grow up in a different kind of life than I had. My Our friends with my ex-wife. We went to events that my son was involved into. We went to them together. My ex-wife never had to ask for more child support. We always gave her a raise. My wife was in charge of that. Again, I find money less than boring. My work was what kept me going. I enjoyed the work and I enjoyed meeting people. I was very fortunate to meet people in my work. The meeting of the people and learning from them was the driving force, was the interesting part of my work. And of course, making enough money to raise a family and keep them under a roof and safe and eating. So you have to have a plan, short term and long term. And because I didn't have a pension, I bought real estate and it wasn't easy. I bought my first house by recycling bottles and cans and copper wire. It took me 3 years to save $3,000 and we saved newspapers also. And I bought a condo for $30,000 with a $3,000 down payment. And in 1 year, I sold it for $47,000 because of the improvements I made on that property and bought a house in a nice neighborhood that needed a lot of work. I paid $52,000 for that house. I fixed it up nicely, did tile, stucco, roof, skylights, you name it. We did it and I was sadly asked to leave that domicile at one point, and my wife went on and sold it for $217,000. So that was a nice investment. So I don't want to hear people tell me how things can't be done. If someone tells their child that the world is against them, that they can't succeed, that is the worst kind of child abuse on the planet, and they should be locked up. You should tell your child, as I told my son, that he could do anything he wanted to do. I know today at 71, if everything fell apart, I could go out and buy a used truck and go back to work, put an ad in the paper, and start over again. I wouldn't want to. It would be hard, but I would have to if I lost my wealth, which I won't. I'm pretty much secure owning several rental properties and investments in other places. I'm okay. But we don't know what tomorrow brings. Every day is a new adventure. Just listen to the radio, read the paper. Every day something happens you find unbelievable. So some bad things can happen. Be prepared for those things. I I wasn't prepared for my first divorce. I went to live with my brother. I met my wife thereafter, and her parents saw me as a loser. I bought a car because I couldn't date in a truck, so I bought a used car. And my in-laws saw me as a person with a used car and a slightly defective child, and they were right in that sense. But they didn't know that I would become a multimillionaire within 20 years, which is what happened because I was determined. And with my own hands and with one person working for me, I went from having nothing, living in a room with my brother, to owning 8 pieces of property and living on the water and watching sailboats go by because that's what my wife wanted. That's what I wanted for my wife and for us. If you want to live in an apartment and watch the ball game, you can do that. If you want more, you can do that. You have to have a destination and you have to have a map. One without the other is useless. You have a map, what good is it if you have no destination? If you have a destination and no way of getting there, you're not going to get there. It's simple. This is the 1 + 1 = 2. And sadly, look at the statistics. Most people die with what they came into this world with, a naked butt and nothing else.
RC, man, I love what you just said. So, whenever I get on stage and I speak, or whenever I put people through my program, I talk about the 3D: decision, direction, and destination.
Absolutely.
You just confirmed that. Yeah, man. Man, I love your supreme confidence. I love your mental fortitude, and I could tell. And I could tell that's what some of the driving factors. I could also tell that your upbringing made you mentally tough to persevere and just be supremely successful. And
I'm resilient if nothing else.
yes, sir. I wanted to touch on something before I jump into the traveling piece. And I'm asking you that to share with our listeners. And I was divorced the first time, and my life like unraveled. I got a DUI the same night that I got the letter in the mail, and we went through a long custody battle. Just a whole bunch of things with trying to be in my son's life. Speaking of your story, it turned out you guys worked things out where, and your wife was supporting you, but you did mention that you did have to go back and stay with your brother. You did have to deal with a whole bunch of things. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like mentally for you, just to deal with that and go through that? And then what were some of the stepping stones? What were some of the things that you did to overcome that, to get yourself back on track? Just for our listeners that could maybe go into a divorce right now, or have been divorced or anything like that.
Well, first of all, you have to understand what's important in your life, and everybody perhaps have a different hierarchy of what's important in their life. For me, it was family and work, and that's a great place to start from. I had an example from my upbringing and my father and the surroundings not to be an alcoholic or to drink. So that wasn't on the table. I knew I wasn't going to do that. I had that conversation with my mother when my first marriage failed, that if this disaster wouldn't drive me to drink, nothing would. And it didn't. Um, I gave everything to my wife. I gave her our home. I gave her our vehicle. I got out of there with my desk and my clothing. I wanted my son to have a house to live in. I wanted to know where he was at. And by giving my wife that home, that gave me the reassurance that he couldn't be taken in a moment's notice and disappear somewhere.
Mhm.
I would I had joint custody. I saw him every Wednesday and every other weekend, uh, and it was hard. I cried every night. And then for me, because of the circumstances of my first divorce, my wife was unfaithful and was not interested in me as a physical partner any longer. I needed physical companionship. So that year, I was 28 years old. My wife gave me a combination going away and birthday party, unbeknownst to me. And so I had the birthday, and then I had the suitcase on the porch. Uh, I vowed to get my revenge, which would have been to become as successfully as humanly possible, to make her understand that she had made a tremendous mistake.
Mm.
And that's what I've done. And along the way, I've made my wife very happy and I eat pretty well. Um, but that was a driving force, I must admit to you, that, being tossed away and made to feel worthless, you can either sit around and get drunk and disorderly, or man up and go to work and keep busy. And my work, I was very social. And as now in my circumstance with the loss of my son, the fact that I'm very social every day, I have 14, 15 people I play tennis with during the week. We're out there, 4, 8 of us, 10 of us out there playing. I communicate, we talk, we joke. That keeps me occupied, keeps my mind from focusing on my loss. I could sit here and cry. It's easy to do. I do it, but I have to go forward and I have to socialize with my friends and do my work. I have work that I still have to complete. I have a desire and a goal set for me at this point in my life. I've accomplished more than I ever dreamt of. All I ever wanted was to have a house and take care of my family. I've I've become wealthy beyond my wildest dreams and very comfortable. I'll never have to worry about anything, nor will my wife. Uh, and that's because partly because I came from a family with nothing, partly because my first wife threw me out and I lost everything, and partly because of who I am. These are the mysteries of the universe. I'm actually in therapy now dealing with these issues, and I find it interesting that I didn't end up dead or in prison, and I want to find out why. Maybe that's not an answerable question, but I'm going to try to understand that. Why do some people follow in the footsteps of a bad trajectory, and why do others learn from those lessons and go on to be successful, moderately or otherwise? That to me is interesting and a mystery.
I like the fact that you never let anything around like limiting beliefs like hold you back, as like you kind of alluded to that. People will let their childhood hold them back. They'll let breakups and relationships hold them back and think they could never amount to anything.
We all
Mm.
suffer the same things. We
Right.
all do. Some worse than others. Much more worse than I ever experienced. And I saw some pretty crappy stuff. So you can sit at home and can get out and make a life stuff. We only get one shot here, as far as I know. I hope there's something after. I don't know. I
One
hope
shot.
my son is somewhere or will be somewhere and we'll meet again. I have no idea. I have to deal with that and remember the good times we had. And I'm going to end up a hunk of bones somewhere if I'm lucky. Uh, if I don't get killed in a plane crash traveling somewhere, I'll be buried. I'll be buried somewhere dead like everybody else, and all the stuff that I accomplished will mean nothing except for the now.
Speaking of traveling, I went to your website and you've been traveling a very long time, sir. And you've seen some amazing things. And me and my wife are just getting started. We just came back from Italy. We was in Rome. And
Oh,
I said, "Hey, RC took a picture by the Colosseum."
that's that's the cover of Grandpa Ernie's Secrets. That's a spy novel that takes place in Italy.
That's right.
It's a fun
So,
novel.
if you can, man, tell us about you being a world traveler, some of the places that you've been, some of the things that you've done, some of the you can tell us some of the best, some of the worst, some of the best food you've eaten. I'm pretty sure I want to hear that stuff, but I'm pretty sure our listeners want to hear some of these trips and adventures that you've been on, man.
Well, this is all due to my wife. Her father was born in England, and she has much family there still.
My
He was
grandfather's from England.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Whereabouts?
He's from London, England. He was a nurse there, but he came to Jamaica like in the 1970s, I believe he came to Jamaica.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, see, this is what life is about. My wife took me to London the year after we were married to meet her family,
Mhm.
and we did a group tour of Europe. I've been to North Korea. I've been to the Five Stands. I've been to the Soviet Union. Uh, I've been to 5 countries in Africa. I've been all through South America. I speak Spanish, by the way. So when I'm traveling in South America or Spain, I just came back from Spain and Portugal. I can get by with my Spanish, and of course, Italian and Spanish are very similar.
Yes.
I can get by with
Grazie, grazie.
the phrase book in Italy. My wife was stationed in Italy in the Navy for a year, so she knows a few of the choice cuss words, so we can get by. I've been to 83 countries. I've been to all 7 continents. I've been to several countries in South America, all through Europe on river cruises, bus tours, you name it, we've done it. Uh, been to India 3 times. India is incredible. It's a wonderful place. You don't like India, you love it or you hate it. It's just the way it is. It's you're going to be if you're rough and rugged, India is for you. The food is wonderful. The people, a lot of people speak English there. You see things you won't see anywhere else, good and bad, but it is a adventure plus. Interesting story. The women in India who are homeless, a lot of people live on the streets in India. They wear 2 saris. They pour a bucket of water over themselves to wash the outside sari and the sari underneath. They take off the outside sari. They have a clean sari on. Somewhere during the day, they find a place to put the other sari on underneath. They've got 2 saris on all the time, apparently. How inventive, how clever. We don't do that in America. You're not gonna see that walking down the street in America. Go to India. Uh, Likewise, Africa. You're not gonna see an elephant in your backyard. You're not gonna see these animals. You're not gonna meet people from different ethnic tribes. Although America is the exception to most countries until 10 or 15, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
where we were a very open culture and we have people here from everywhere. A lot of countries didn't do that until lately. So if you wanted to see Africans, you had to go to Africa. Uh, Black Americans are African removed a few centuries, but that's a different culture. So go to Uganda. I'm going to Rwanda in October to see the mountain gorillas. I'm going to Jordan and Egypt in November, or vice versa. I'm going to London in September for a wedding. So these are the things I'm doing this year. I have a trip planned from a cruise, a 3-week cruise from Indonesia to Japan next year. I'm probably going somewhere else. My wife keeps track of these things. I don't keep track. The day before we leave, she tells me, and she's already packed. I don't pack. She packs for me. I'm a I'm a lucky cowboy. My wife does a lot of things for me, and if you get a chance to travel, you have to do it because you will absolutely learn how lucky you are to be an American. You will learn how open and friendly other people can be and how they are not sometimes, depending on circumstance, and always circumstance dictates how people treat you. To you in France or in Poland or wherever you are, they may have other issues they're dealing with. Your job as an American is to be the best American you can be. You represent your country whether you like it or not. So don't wear a sleeveless blouse in the churches. Use your noodle. Put on a jacket or a long sleeve coat. We see this every time we travel, people being disrespectful of other people's religions and cultures. Don't do that. Read before you go, learn some things. If you're on a guided tour, they tell you, and yet people still don't follow through. Uh, so yes, it's important. I've seen more penguins than you can shake a stick at. I think you might have seen that picture on my website. Millions of penguins. When people tell you there are no penguins and there are no whales, bah humbug. Go to Antarctica. You will see and smell more penguins than you've ever smelt in your whole darn life. Uh, the world's a big place. I want to see everything. I talk to people on LinkedIn in Pakistan and India all the time, in Iran. We want to go to Iran. My wife just found out that she's ethnically Iranian. She thought she was ethnically a Russian Jew. She's an
Mhm.
Iranian Mizrahi Jew. The family went to Russia at some point, ran out of dough, and couldn't leave town and lost her, forgot what their culture was. So we did the DNA testing, and she's Iranian. If you saw her, you would know she was. The Iranian
Mhm.
women are attractive and have a particular look about them, green eyes, and it's very interesting. You learn so much when you travel. When my wife travels, everybody thinks she's a local. Spain, Italy, Turkey, Morocco, you name it, everybody thinks that's where she's from.
Wow,
I
man.
I think that's important to remember. We are not so different from each other. I watched a program yesterday, and the whole family I thought were Hispanic, and they were from Iran. Oh, no, pardon me, Egypt. Egypt. So you can't you don't know until you talk to somebody where they're from and what culture they hail from, and that is what makes life interesting. If you wanna go through life being cranky because someone's different than you, go ahead, do it. Where's it gonna get you? Nowheresville.
Nowhere, man. So I love that you're a world traveler and you shared that story. Me and my wife were talking that we were going to make it a point as much as we could travel and we could involve our kids, we were going to get them involved because it's so important to get them culture. And we said that because when I grew up, I just grew up living in Miami, Florida. I didn't know anything outside of Miami, Florida until I joined the Marine Corps. Joining the Marine Corps changed my life in regards to like traveling.
We need the
And but
draft back, if only for that.
only for that. So we had the opportunity to travel in so many different places just within the United States. And then we had our boys travel with us so they could just see more things outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and outside of Miami, Florida. And now we have an adult son and we have a younger 15-year-old son. But we could tell when they're around their peers, how they respond, how they act, or when it comes to talking to people, when it comes to tasting different types of food, or just be willing to try different types of food and how they communicate. So that was extremely important for us. Speaking of Egypt, we are headed. We just came, like I told you, we just came back from Italy, but we'll be heading to Cairo, Egypt, and Luxor, Egypt. We're going for
Oh,
2 weeks,
wonderful.
and we're going to be headed there in October and November as well.
We had plans. We've had planned twice to go to Egypt, and both times there's been political unrest, and we weren't allowed to go.
Mm.
My wife is Jewish, by the way. She thought it was some kind of a Jewish curse that we couldn't go to Egypt, and now we're scheduled to go. We'll see what happens this time. Hopefully, we'll get to get in there. She wants us to
Absolutely,
go.
man. I hope you guys do. I uh I wanted to add that one grandparent on my dad's side, he's from London, England, and then on my mom's side, my dad is from my grandfather. He's from Cuba, and I just think it's an interesting dynamic just to see them. So they both have passed away now, but growing up, just to see them how they interacted and how they carried on some of those traditions from like their boyhoodness. And then once I saw my grandparents like in their 80s, my grandfather started speaking Spanish again. Like he grew up speaking Jamaican, but once he got to an elderly age, he started speaking Spanish around us. And I just thought that was extremely fascinating, man.
But isn't this interesting? You have were they both African Americans from
Yes, they
Africa?
were.
Okay,
They were.
so you see a black person walking down the street. You cannot assume anything about that person.
Right.
The heritage of those people go everywhere in the world. Learn
Absolutely.
what's really going on. You can't make assumptions. How many black people speak Spanish or Italian? Or, look at the dogs around the world that have to learn Chinese and Spanish and every other language to live as a domestic pet. I find that fascinating that you have dogs that speak Italian, right? I mean, no, who
Right,
thinks
right,
about
right, right.
maybe I'm a little crazy, but I think about things like that. So
No,
you
you're right.
can't take people at face value. Dig a little bit, take some time to talk to people and learn about who they are, and be nice to each other. Because if you're not going to be nice to them, why the hell should anybody be nice to you?
Absolutely, man. RC, this has been a very fascinating conversation to learn so much about you, man. You have so much life, so much spirit, and so much of a story of resilience. Um, if you can, before we get out of here, can you share with our audience any life lessons that they could take away and just to take bits and pieces nuggets and just put that into their life. Like I said, man, you came from so to speak nothing to, as you said, a multimillionaire and living the life and living the dream of traveling where you want, doing what you want, and never have to worry about anything. Can you tell us some life lessons that we could have some key takeaways?
Well, first of all, no matter how much money you have, it doesn't change you. I still feel like I'm broke because money wasn't important. That's not my driving force.
Hmm.
Uh, Failure is not an option. You cannot fail. You have to succeed at whatever it is you decide to do. I still have voices in my head telling me I'm not going to sell any books. So far, they've been pretty accurate, but I'm not going to let that stop me from trying to do this. I'm going to exercise this muscle between my ears until doomsday. And I have a target amount of money I want to make. I don't have a target timeline. I hope to be here as long as possible, as long as I can walk and eat and have a decent quality of life. I want to hang around. Uh, but you can be exactly what you want to be. If you want to be the guy that sits at home on Friday after work and just that's enough for you, you want to make $1,000 a month and have a nice apartment, good, perfect. If you want more than that, you got to work for it. Work harder. And when you think you're working really hard, work another day. Start a side gig. Do whatever it takes. Collect cans. Walk down the beach with your wife with a bag and pick up aluminum cans and bottles. My son used to make $150 a month just in recycling. I still recycle. I just give it to somebody else who wants it. But you can do exactly what you want to do. You just have to know what you want to do. That's the most important thing. Don't listen to these people around you who tell you, oh, you're not going to amount to anything. And a lot of times parents are guilty of that. Don't listen to them. Show them that they're wrong. Prove them wrong. Make them want to be you, or at least live your life. What else can I say?
Said enough, man. I will add, you said something. I just wanted to share this with you, man. Growing up, when we came to America, I liked American football or picked up on it and started liking it. And growing up in here in Miami, I became a fan of the Miami Dolphins. And I became a fan of Dan Marino. And I seen all of the kids started collecting these football cards, baseball cards, comic books, and these types of things. And they told me that these things are of value. Back then, Dan Marino cards was not worth anything because he was just up and coming. So my mom came home and said, if you pick up these cans, you'll get paid for them. So I said, oh, really? So for me to buy these cards, I started walking around the neighborhood while all of my friends was playing football on the streets. I was walking around with a trash bag picking up cans every single Saturday. And to tell you that now, I've been collecting cards since 8 years old, and I stopped when I got to about 25, 26 years old. I have close to over probably 20,000, 30,000 baseball, basketball cards
Wow.
that I've been collecting. And now I have Dan Marino cards in my collection, Magic Johnson, Larry Birds, you name it, man. But to see what that hard work started from, just picking up cans and all of these different things, just to add to a little bit to your story of just do what you got to do.
That's right.
Do what you got to do. You know what I mean?
You have a much more bigger appreciation of the value acquired them. They weren't given to you, you earned them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So RC, before we get out of here, man, if anybody wanted to book you on a podcast, book you for speaking, purchase your book, or do business with you, or anything of that magnitude, how could they get a hold of you and reach out to you?
I tell true stories on stage, by the way. I have a lot of interesting stories. I think you probably saw some of them on my website. Anybody who comes to cowboyproductions52.com can see my books, first chapters of all my books, and read A Shot in the Dark. That's kind of an interesting little short story. Take you 5 minutes to read it. My email address is cowboyproductions52@gmail.com. My website is cowboyproductions52.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at RC Hand, and I tell true stories on stage. I would love to be on other podcasts. I think I have something of value to offer, and maybe somebody will want to talk to me. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much.
Without a doubt, RC, man, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and just being totally transparent in regards to your upbringing. I know that some of our listeners are people that overcoming adversity, and quite honestly, after some people have listened to some of these podcasts, they end up sharing it with family and friends because they know that they're in some of these same situations. So, with that being
Absolutely.
said, man, I just want to tell you thank you so much. It's been an honor to listen to your story and have you on to the show, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys, we drop episodes weekly. We're out of here. Peace, and we love you.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, know it come and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.